Hey guys, tonight we are diving 3 miles below the surface of the Pacific Ocean, where the water pressure would crush your body in less than a second, and the darkness is so complete that your eyes become utterly useless. You definitely wouldn't survive this, but here, in this impossible realm, something extraordinary is happening that most people never get to experience. The ocean is singing to itself in frequencies so low and haunting that they can travel halfway around the world without losing their mysterious power. And tonight, you get to witness this underwater symphony from the safety of your warm bed. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and while you're at it, drop a comment, letting me know where you're listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. I love knowing that we're all connected by these strange ocean mysteries, no matter where we are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself suspended in the abyssal depths, your consciousness somehow able to withstand the crushing weight of 3 miles of water above you. And as you adjust to this alien environment, the first thing that strikes you is not the cold or the darkness, but the sound, a deep thrumming that seems to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, like the earth itself is humming a lullaby that only the deepest parts of the ocean can hear. This is the realm of infrasonic communication, where sound waves travel at frequencies below 20 hertz, far beneath the range of human hearing. Yet somehow, you can sense them here in this underwater dreamscape, vibrating through your ethereal form, like the bass line of some cosmic song. These sounds move through the water with such persistence that a whale's call made off the coast of California can be detected by hydrophones near Japan, crossing the entire Pacific basin with barely any loss of intensity. You drift deeper, following these invisible sound highways that crisscross the ocean like an ancient communication network, and you begin to understand why the deep sea has been called the world's largest echo chamber. Here, where light has never penetrated, sound becomes the primary language, the way creatures navigate, hunt, communicate, and perhaps even dream, if such beings can dream. The water around you carries not just the calls of living things, but also the geological conversations of the planet itself, the groaning of tectonic plates shifting along the ocean floor, the rumble of underwater avalanches cascading down the continental shelf, the whispered secrets of volcanic vents releasing their mineral-rich breath into the eternal night. All of these sounds blend together into a symphony so complex that scientists are still trying to decode its meaning. Researchers still argue that we understand less than 5% of the acoustic landscape of the deep ocean, which means that right now, as you float in this soundscape of mysteries, you are witnessing something that humanity is only beginning to comprehend, like being present at the first performance of a musical composition that has been playing continuously for millions of years. You notice how the water itself seems to amplify certain frequencies while dampening others, creating acoustic sweet spots where sounds can travel extraordinary distances with perfect clarity. These are the ocean's natural amplification chambers, formed by layers of water at different temperatures and densities, and they act like underwater highways for sound, guiding whale songs and dolphin clicks along predetermined paths that span entire ocean basins. The haunting quality of these deep ocean sounds comes partly from their incredible longevity. Some of the low-frequency calls you're experiencing right now began their journey weeks ago, traveling slowly but persistently through the water, gathering echoes and harmonics along the way, picking up the acoustic fingerprints of underwater mountains, deep trenches, and thermal layers, so that by the time they reach your location, they carry within them a sonic map of everything they have encountered on their long journey through the abyss. You follow one of these sound highways toward its source and soon find yourself in the presence of something magnificent, a humpback whale suspended motionless in the water column, its massive form barely visible in the eternal darkness. But you don't need to see it to know it's there, because the creature is singing, producing a complex melody that seems to emerge from the very essence of the ocean itself, each note resonating through your consciousness with the weight of ancient wisdom. The whale's song begins as a low moan that seems to come from the depths of the earth, rising gradually into a series of whoops and whistles that dance through the water like liquid music. And what strikes you most is not just the beauty of the melody, but its incredible length. This particular song has been continuing for over 30 minutes now, weaving through themes and variations like a jazz musician improvising on a familiar standard. Except this standard has been passed down through generations of whales for thousands of years. You drift closer and realize that this is not a solitary performance. Somewhere in the distance, perhaps hundreds of miles away, another whale is answering, its song harmonizing with the first in ways that suggest not just communication, but actual musical collaboration. And as you listen, you begin to understand that you are witnessing something that researchers still argue defies easy explanation, a form of long-distance musical conversation that spans entire ocean basins and continues for hours at a time. The complexity of what you're hearing is staggering. Each whale song contains dozens of distinct phrases arranged in specific sequences, and these sequences change gradually over time, spreading through whale populations like new hit songs spreading through human culture. Except the process takes months or years instead of weeks, and the songs themselves can persist in modified forms for decades, passed from adult whales to their young in an oral tradition that predates human civilization by millions of years. You follow the sound waves as they propagate outward from the singing whale, watching as they travel through different layers of ocean water, each layer acting like a different instrument in a vast underwater orchestra. The thermocline bends the song's path downward, sending it into the deep sound channel where it can travel for thousands of miles without significant loss, while shallower layers scatter and reflect portions of the melody, creating echoes that return to the singer hours later, like delayed responses from the ocean itself. What puzzles you most about these whale songs is their apparent purposelessness. At least from a human perspective, the whales are not hunting, not mating, not warning of danger. They are simply singing into the void, pouring their souls into melodies that may never reach another living creature. Yet they continue, hour after hour, day after day, as if the act of singing itself serves some deeper purpose that transcends mere communication. Researchers still argue that whale songs serve multiple functions simultaneously, acting as sonar maps to help whales navigate, as cultural identifiers that help them recognize members of their own population, and as emotional expressions that convey the singer's psychological state. But none of these explanations fully account for the song's extraordinary beauty and complexity, or for the fact that whales sometimes sing alone in empty ocean, their melodies disappearing into darkness with no apparent recipient. You witness something remarkable as the whale's song begins to change subtly, incorporating new phrases and variations that you somehow sense have never been sung before. This is musical evolution happening in real time. The whale is not just performing an ancient song, but actively composing, adding its own voice to a musical tradition that stretches back through countless generations, and you realize that you are present at the creation of something new in the world, a melody that will eventually spread to other whales and become part of their shared cultural heritage. The haunting quality of the whale's voice seems to increase as you listen, each note carrying within it not just sound, but emotion, longing, perhaps even a kind of oceanic sadness that speaks to the vast distances these creatures must traverse in their lifelong search for connection. And you begin to understand why these songs have such power to move human listeners. They express something universal about the experience of calling out into the unknown and hoping for an answer. You drift away from the singing whale, following the sound waves as they spread through the deep ocean channels, when suddenly you encounter something that stops you completely, a sound so strange and powerful that it seems to shake the very foundations of the underwater world around you. This is not the melodic complexity of whale song, but something far more mysterious. A deep, rising frequency sweep that lasts for over a minute and seems to emerge from the deepest trenches of the ocean floor itself. This is what marine biologists have nicknamed the bloop, though the original bloop, recorded in 1997, was eventually traced to the sound of Antarctic ice breaking away from glaciers. The name has become a catch-all term for the dozens of unexplained acoustic phenomena that hydrophone networks detect in the ocean every year. Sounds so bizarre and powerful that they have spawned countless theories about their origins, from unknown species of giant sea creatures to underwater volcanic activity that operates on timescales far longer than anything previously documented. You follow the sound deeper into the abyss, past the whale songs and dolphin clicks, past the familiar territory of known marine life, into regions where the water pressure exceeds anything that surface dwellers can imagine. And here in this realm of permanent midnight, you encounter the true phantom sounds of the ocean, acoustic mysteries that have been detected by underwater microphones for decades, but never adequately explained by science. The sound you're experiencing now resembles nothing so much as the groaning of some massive structure under stress, like the hull of an impossibly large ship slowly buckling under pressure. Except this sound continues for hours, rising and falling in volume, but never quite disappearing, and it seems to move through the water in ways that suggest its source is not stationary, but actively traveling through the deep ocean, perhaps following the abyssal currents that flow like slow rivers along the ocean floor. Researchers still argue that many of these phantom sounds originate from geological processes that we don't yet understand. The Earth's crust beneath the ocean is constantly shifting and settling, creating stress patterns that might produce acoustic phenomena unlike anything we experience on land. The movement of massive underwater landslides, the slow opening of new thermal vents, the gradual collapse of underwater cave systems, all of these processes could generate the strange sounds that hydrophone networks detect but cannot explain. You encounter another type of phantom sound, a series of rapid clicks that seem almost mechanical in their precision, like some vast underwater machine operating at the edge of human perception. These clicks appear in sequences that last for minutes at a time, following patterns that suggest intelligence but originate from locations where no known life forms could survive. Some researchers have theorized that these sounds represent a form of geological echolocation, the Earth itself using sound waves to map the changing structure of the ocean floor. The most unsettling phantom sounds are those that seem to respond to human activity. Hydrophone operators have reported detecting strange acoustic phenomena that appear shortly after ships pass through certain areas, or after underwater explosions from seismic surveys, as if something in the deep ocean is reacting to these disturbances, testing or investigating the source of the unusual sounds. And while these reports remain anecdotal, they suggest that the deep ocean may harbor forms of intelligence or awareness that we cannot yet comprehend. You drift through a region where multiple phantom sounds overlap, creating an acoustic landscape that seems to shift and change like an underwater aurora. Sounds that rise from the deepest trenches blend with others that seem to emanate from midwater, and occasionally you detect what can only be described as acoustic shadows, areas where certain frequencies are mysteriously absent, as if something massive is blocking or absorbing specific types of sound waves. Some of the most intriguing phantom sounds are those that appear to be biological in origin, but come from creatures that have never been observed, calls that suggest animals far larger than any known whale, or vocalizations that exhibit patterns of complexity that rival human language. Remember the whale song from before, with its structured phrases and cultural transmission. These phantom calls exhibit similar organizational principles, but originate from sources that remain completely unknown to science. The mystery deepens when you realize that many of these phantom sounds appear to be seasonal, occurring more frequently during certain times of year or in response to changes in ocean temperature and current patterns, suggesting that whatever produces them is sensitive to environmental conditions in ways that indicate either biological or geological processes operating on scales that dwarf human understanding. You descend further into the acoustic realm where the phantom sounds gradually fade, replaced by something even more fundamental to the ocean's hidden communication network. Here in the deepest waters, you begin to sense the presence of infrasonic waves, sound frequencies so low that they exist at the very edge of what can be called sound at all, vibrations that travel through the water like invisible highways of information, connecting every part of the ocean in a vast web of subsonic communication. These infrasonic waves operate below the threshold of human hearing typically ranging from 1 to 20 hertz, frequencies so deep that they seem to merge with the Earth's own vibrational patterns. And as you attune your consciousness to these ultra-low frequencies, you begin to understand that the ocean possesses an entirely separate layer of acoustic reality, a subsonic internet that has been operating continuously for millions of years without any awareness from surface dwellers. You follow one of these infrasonic highways as it propagates across the Pacific Basin, watching as the sound wave maintains its integrity across thousands of miles of water, barely diminished by its epic journey. And you realize that this is how the ocean's largest inhabitants can maintain contact across impossible distances. Blue whales separated by entire continents can exchange infrasonic calls that travel through the deep sound channel with such efficiency that the messages arrive almost as clearly as if the whales were swimming side by side. The physics of infrasonic propagation in seawater creates conditions that seem almost magical. These ultra-low frequencies can bend around underwater obstacles that would completely block higher-pitched sounds. They can travel through layers of water with different densities without losing their coherence, and they can even use the ocean floor itself as a waveguide, following the contours of underwater mountain ranges and deep trenches like acoustic rivers flowing along the bottom of the sea. Researchers still argue that infrasonic communication in the ocean represents one of the planet's most sophisticated information networks, potentially allowing marine animals to share data about weather patterns, food sources, and migration routes across entire ocean basins. Imagine if you could send a text message to someone on the other side of the world simply by humming at a frequency too low for anyone else to hear. That's essentially what's happening in the deep ocean every moment of every day. You encounter a convergence zone where multiple infrasonic highways intersect, creating an underwater acoustic nexus where information from across the Pacific Basin flows together. Here, you can sense the subsonic calls of blue whales off the California coast, mixing with the deep rumbles of tectonic activity near Japan. The infrasonic signatures of storm systems brewing near Australia, and the mysterious mechanical sounds that seem to emanate from the deepest ocean trenches. The most remarkable aspect of these infrasonic networks is their stability. Unlike the higher frequency sounds that scatter and degrade rapidly in seawater, these ultra-low vibrations can maintain their structure for weeks as they circle the globe. Some researchers believe that certain infrasonic signals may actually circumnavigate the entire planet multiple times, creating a kind of acoustic memory system where information about distant events continues to circulate through the ocean long after the original source has fallen silent. You begin to perceive patterns in the infrasonic traffic flowing around you. Certain frequencies appear more frequently during specific seasons. Others seem to pulse in rhythm with tidal cycles or lunar phases, and some exhibit complex modulation patterns that suggest they carry encoded information, like a biological form of frequency shift keying. The same principle used in early radio communications, but evolved naturally in the ocean millions of years before humans discovered electromagnetic waves. The connection between infrasonic communication and navigation becomes apparent as you observe how marine animals seem to use these ultra-low frequencies as acoustic landmarks, the way bats use echolocation to navigate in darkness, except on a planetary scale. A whale traveling from Alaska to Hawaii might navigate by listening to the infrasonic signature of underwater mountain ranges, using these subsonic echoes to maintain its course across thousands of miles of seemingly featureless ocean. You notice that some of the infrasonic patterns you're detecting don't seem to originate from any known biological or geological source. These signals exhibit characteristics that suggest artificial generation, but they occur in parts of the ocean far from any human activity, leading to speculation that the Earth itself might generate infrasonic communications through processes we don't yet understand. Perhaps the planet uses these ultra-low frequencies to monitor the health of its ocean systems, like a vast biological feedback network operating below the threshold of our awareness. You follow the infrasonic highways deeper into the abyssal realm where something extraordinary begins to happen. The omnipresent background hum of the ocean's acoustic network suddenly diminishes, fading to almost nothing as you drift into what can only be described as an underwater desert of silence. Here, in the shadow of a massive seamount that rises from the ocean floor like an inverted mountain, you discover one of the ocean's most mysterious phenomena: acoustic shadow zones, where sound simply vanishes. The seamount looms above you in the darkness, its bulk creating a sound shadow that extends for hundreds of miles downstream from the prevailing currents. And within this shadow zone, the normal cacophony of ocean noise drops to whisper levels. The whale songs that have been your constant companions fade to barely perceptible echoes. The infrasonic highways that connect the ocean's communication network seem to curve around this area like rivers flowing around a massive stone, leaving you in a pocket of profound acoustic isolation. This is not merely an absence of sound, but something far more complex. The seamount's shape and composition create acoustic conditions that actively absorb and scatter sound waves, particularly those in the mid-frequency ranges that most marine animals use for communication. The result is an underwater quiet zone where normal acoustic behavior breaks down and marine life must adapt to conditions of near total sonic isolation. You drift through this acoustic shadow and notice how it affects the behavior of the few creatures you encounter here. Fish that normally rely on sound for schooling swim in loose, disorganized groups, their usual coordination disrupted by the lack of acoustic cues. Dolphins that venture into the shadow zone alter their echolocation patterns dramatically, sending out longer, more powerful clicks to compensate for the sound-absorbing properties of the environment. Researchers still argue that these acoustic shadow zones may serve as refuges for marine species that are sensitive to noise pollution, areas where animals can escape the increasing din of ship traffic and industrial activity that now fills much of the world's oceans. Remember the phantom sounds from before, with their mysterious origins and unknown purposes. Those strange signals seem to avoid these shadow zones entirely, as if whatever generates them also seeks to preserve these pockets of oceanic silence. The science behind acoustic shadowing in the ocean involves complex interactions between sound waves and underwater topography. When infrasonic or sonic frequencies encounter a large obstacle, like a seamount, they bend and scatter according to principles that are still being studied. Some frequencies are absorbed by the rock and sediment. Others are reflected back toward their source, and still others are refracted around the obstacle, creating interference patterns that can extend the shadow zone far beyond what simple geometry would predict. You discover that these shadow zones are not uniformly quiet. Instead, they contain their own unique acoustic landscape, subtle sounds that would be completely masked in the normal ocean environment become audible here. The gentle settling of marine snow as organic matter drifts down from the surface layers, the nearly inaudible clicking of deep sea creatures as they navigate by touch and chemical cues rather than sound, the whisper-soft movement of deep currents flowing around the seamount's base. Within the deepest part of the shadow zone, you encounter something that defies explanation, a sound that seems to exist in the absence of any obvious source, a faint harmonic resonance that appears to emerge from the seamount itself, as if the massive underwater mountain is somehow generating its own acoustic signature, vibrating at frequencies so low and subtle that they can only be detected in the profound quiet of the shadow zone. The edges of the shadow zone create fascinating boundary effects where the normal ocean soundscape gradually returns, like emerging from a soundproof room into a busy street. Whale songs that were completely inaudible in the shadow suddenly bloom into full complexity. The infrasonic communication networks resume their constant traffic of subsonic information, and the phantom sounds reappear with their usual mysterious persistence. Some marine biologists theorize that acoustic shadow zones like this one may have played a crucial role in the evolution of deep-sea life, providing isolated environments where species could develop along different evolutionary paths, free from the acoustic pressures that shape behavior in the rest of the ocean. It's possible that some of the strange calls and phantom sounds you experienced earlier actually represent the voices of creatures that evolved in these shadow zones and rarely venture into the normal acoustic environment of the open ocean. The phenomenon becomes even more intriguing when you realize that the shadow zone's boundaries shift with changes in water temperature and current patterns, creating a dynamic environment where the extent of acoustic isolation varies seasonally. During certain times of year, the shadow zone contracts, forcing shadow-adapted species to retreat deeper into the seamount's influence, while during other periods, the zone expands, potentially allowing these isolated creatures to explore the broader ocean environment. You drift away from the acoustic shadow zone and find yourself drawn towards something that seems impossible, an underwater archive where the ocean has been recording its own acoustic history for millions of years, here in a region where sediment layers accumulate with clockwork precision on the abyssal plain. You discover that the Earth has been maintaining its own sound library, preserving the acoustic signatures of prehistoric events in layers of mud and microscopic shells that tell the story of the ocean's sonic evolution. The sediment beneath you consists of countless layers, each one representing a different epoch in the ocean's acoustic history. And as you descend through these geological strata, you begin to understand that sound waves don't just travel through water and disappear. They leave traces, subtle changes in the way sediments settle, microscopic alterations in the shell formation of deep-sea organisms, chemical signatures that persist long after the original sounds have faded into silence. Scientists have learned to read these acoustic fossils like pages in an ancient book. The shells of foraminifera, tiny single-celled organisms that drift through the ocean in countless billions, grow differently when exposed to intense low-frequency sounds, their calcium carbonate structures developing stress patterns that can be detected millions of years later, creating a permanent record of the acoustic environment in which they lived and died. You witness the process of acoustic fossilization happening in real time as marine snow drifts down from the surface layers above, each flake carrying with it the chemical signature of the sounds it encountered during its slow descent through the water column. Whale songs leave their mark in the organic compounds produced by plankton. Volcanic eruptions alter the isotopic composition of settling particles, and even the infrasonic highways you experienced earlier create subtle changes in the way sediments organize themselves on the ocean floor. Remember the phantom sounds from before? With their mysterious origins and unexplained patterns, those same types of anomalous acoustic events have been occurring for geological time periods, and their signatures are preserved in sediment cores that researchers extract from the deep ocean floor. Some of the sounds that puzzle modern marine acoustics experts may actually be echoes of phenomena that have been repeating for millions of years, creating acoustic cycles that operate on timescales far beyond human comprehension. Researchers still argue that the ocean's sedimentary record contains evidence of acoustic events that dwarf anything in recorded human history. Massive underwater landslides that generated sound waves powerful enough to circle the globe multiple times. Asteroid impacts that sent shock waves through the ocean with such intensity that they altered the evolution of marine life. Volcanic eruptions so violent that they created acoustic signatures still detectable in sediment layers hundreds of millions of years old. You discover layers in the sediment that correspond to mass extinction events, and within these layers, the acoustic fossils tell a story of oceanic silence, periods when the normal symphony of marine life was dramatically reduced, leaving behind sedimentary signatures that reflect an ocean temporarily emptied of its usual voices, followed by layers that show the gradual return of acoustic complexity as new species evolved to fill the vacant sonic niches. The most fascinating aspect of this underwater archive is how it reveals the co-evolution of sound and life in the ocean. Early marine organisms that developed the ability to produce and detect sound waves left their signatures in sediments that show increasing acoustic complexity over geological time. The development of whale song, dolphin echolocation, and the infrasonic communication networks you experienced earlier can all be traced through the sedimentary record as a gradual increase in the sophistication of oceanic acoustics. Some of the sediment layers contain evidence of sounds that no longer exist in the modern ocean, the calls of marine species that went extinct millions of years ago, acoustic signatures of geological processes that no longer occur, and most intriguingly, patterns that suggest forms of oceanic communication that were more complex in the past than anything we observe today, as if the ocean once possessed acoustic capabilities that have since been lost to time. You realize that these sedimentary archives represent more than just a record of past sounds. They constitute a form of oceanic memory, a way that the planet preserves information about acoustic events across deep time, and this memory is constantly being written as new sediments accumulate, carrying with them the sonic signatures of our current era, the sounds of modern shipping, sonar systems, and an industrial activity that are now becoming part of the permanent geological record. The ice cores from polar regions tell a similar story, preserving acoustic information in a different medium. Ancient air bubbles trapped in glacial ice contain chemical traces of the atmospheric pressure waves generated by massive oceanic events, creating a complementary archive that helps scientists reconstruct the complete acoustic history of our planet's relationship with its oceans. You emerge from the sedimentary archives and find yourself in the company of the ocean's most sophisticated acoustic engineers, a pod of dolphins whose echolocation abilities make human sonar technology seem primitive by comparison. As you observe these creatures navigating through the water with effortless precision, you begin to understand that natural sonar systems have evolved capabilities that our best engineers are still struggling to replicate, even after decades of studying these remarkable animals. The dolphin nearest to you emits a rapid series of clicks, each one lasting only a few milliseconds, but containing acoustic information so complex and detailed that it creates a three-dimensional sound picture of everything within 100-meter radius. The returning echoes reveal not just the shape and distance of objects, but their internal structure, density, and even emotional state in the case of other living creatures. It's as if the dolphin can see inside things using nothing but sound waves. What amazes you most about this biological sonar is its adaptability. The dolphin automatically adjusts the frequency, intensity, and repetition rate of its clicks based on what it's trying to investigate. When searching for fish hiding in coral formations, it uses high-frequency clicks that can resolve fine details. When communicating with distant pod members, it switches to lower frequencies that travel further through the water. And when navigating in areas of high background noise, it increases the power and modifies the click patterns to cut through the acoustic clutter. You follow the dolphin as it demonstrates another remarkable capability, biosonar beam focusing. The creature can narrow its acoustic beam to examine specific objects with laser-like precision, or widen it to scan broad areas for potential threats or opportunities. This level of control requires neural processing power that rivals the most advanced computer systems. Yet, the dolphin manages these complex acoustic calculations effortlessly while simultaneously swimming, socializing, and hunting. Researchers still argue that dolphin sonar operates on principles that we don't fully understand. The animals seem capable of processing acoustic information in ways that violate some of the basic assumptions of traditional sonar design. They can distinguish between objects that should be acoustically identical, detect changes in their environment that occur faster than their click rate should allow, and somehow extract information from echo patterns that our most sensitive instruments cannot measure. The sperm whale swimming in the distance demonstrates an even more mysterious form of biosonar. Its massive head contains the largest sound-generating organ in the animal kingdom, capable of producing clicks so powerful that they can stun prey at considerable distances. Yet these same organs can also generate subtle acoustic probes that allow the whale to map the ocean floor thousands of meters below, creating detailed mental maps of underwater terrain that guide their deep diving expeditions to hunt for giant squid. You witness something extraordinary as the sperm whale begins its descent toward the abyssal depths. Its click patterns change dramatically as it moves through different water layers, each depth requiring different acoustic strategies to compensate for changing pressure, temperature, and density conditions. Remember the infrasonic highways from before. The whale seems to use these natural sound channels to enhance its own sonar capabilities, riding the acoustic currents like a surfer rides ocean waves. The whale's biosonar reveals capabilities that challenge our understanding of physics. It can apparently distinguish between squid of different species based solely on the acoustic signature of their bodies, detect the presence of prey animals that are motionless and hiding, and even assess the health and emotional state of other whales from their echo characteristics. This suggests that biological sonar systems can extract types of information that purely mechanical systems cannot access. Smaller toothed whales demonstrate yet another acoustic mystery, their ability to coordinate group hunting using synchronized echolocation. Multiple individuals can apparently share acoustic information in real time, creating a collective sonar system that provides much more detailed environmental awareness than any single animal could achieve alone. It's like having multiple radar installations that can instantly share and cross-reference their data to create a unified picture of the acoustic landscape. The most puzzling aspect of marine biosonar is how these animals avoid interference between their own acoustic signals and those of other nearby creatures. In areas where dozens of dolphins or whales are using echolocation simultaneously, there should be chaos as competing sound waves create confusion and false echoes. Yet somehow, these animals maintain perfect acoustic coordination, suggesting communication and processing capabilities that operate far beyond our current understanding. You observe that some species seem capable of acoustic camouflage, modifying their sonar signatures to avoid detection by predators or prey, while others appear to use their biosonar systems for purposes that have nothing to do with navigation or hunting, creating complex acoustic displays that may serve social or cultural functions. The ocean's natural sonar systems represent a level of acoustic sophistication that humanity is only beginning to appreciate. You leave the dolphins and their sophisticated acoustic engineering behind as something far more powerful begins to make itself known through the water around you, a deep rumbling that seems to emanate from the very bones of the earth itself. This is not the biological complexity of biosonar or the mysterious patterns of phantom sounds, but the raw acoustic power of seismic activity as it propagates through the ocean, creating sound waves that can travel faster through water than through solid rock and carry information about earthquakes happening thousands of miles away. The sensation is unlike anything you've experienced in the underwater realm so far. These seismic whispers arrive as low-frequency pressure waves that seem to push against your consciousness like an invisible tide. And as you attune yourself to these geological voices, you begin to understand that the ocean serves as the planet's most efficient communication system for seismic information, allowing earthquake activity in one part of the world to be detected almost instantaneously on the opposite side of the globe. The physics behind this phenomenon creates conditions that seem almost telepathic in their immediacy. When tectonic plates shift along the ocean floor, they generate acoustic waves that travel through seawater at roughly 1,500 meters per second, much faster than the same seismic energy can propagate through solid rock. This means that underwater seismic sensors can detect major earthquakes before the shock waves reach land-based monitoring stations, giving coastal communities precious minutes of additional warning time. You follow one of these seismic whispers as it races across the Pacific Basin, originating from a magnitude 7.2 earthquake along the Aleutian Trench and spreading outward in expanding circles like ripples from a stone dropped in still water, except these ripples carry enough energy to be detected by sensitive hydrophones in Antarctica, Chile, and the Philippines simultaneously, creating a global network of acoustic earthquake monitoring that operates continuously beneath the waves. Researchers still argue that marine animals may use these seismic whispers as an early warning system for dangerous geological activity. There are documented cases of whales and dolphins altering their behavior minutes before major earthquakes, swimming rapidly away from coastal areas or diving to unusual depths as if responding to seismic precursors that human instruments cannot detect. Remember the infrasonic communication networks from before. These animals might be using their sensitivity to ultra-low frequencies to monitor the planet's geological health. The acoustic signature of underwater earthquakes creates patterns that are distinctly different from surface seismic events. The water column acts as a filter that emphasizes certain frequencies while dampening others, producing what marine seismologists call hydroacoustic signals. These underwater earthquake sounds often exhibit a characteristic frequency sweep that rises and falls over several minutes, like the earth singing a mournful song about the stresses building within its crust. You encounter the acoustic aftermath of an underwater landslide triggered by seismic activity, the sound of millions of tons of sediment cascading down the continental slope creates a roar that propagates through the water for hours after the initial event. And within this acoustic chaos, you can hear the individual voices of different geological processes, the grinding of rocks against each other, the displacement of water by falling debris, and the settling sounds that continue long after the main event has ended. The most mysterious aspect of seismic acoustics in the ocean is how some earthquake sounds seem to be amplified or modified by underwater topography in ways that create phantom echoes. Seismic waves bouncing between seamounts and ocean ridges can generate secondary acoustic events that occur minutes or even hours after the original earthquake, leading to reports of mysterious underwater sounds that have no obvious source. Some of these delayed echoes may contribute to the phantom sounds you experienced earlier in the abyss. Volcanic activity beneath the ocean creates its own distinctive acoustic signature. The sound of magma forcing its way through rock and into contact with seawater generates complex acoustic patterns that can be detected from hundreds of miles away. These volcanic whispers often begin as subtle changes in the ocean's background noise level, gradually building to dramatic crescendos as underwater eruptions reshape the seafloor and alter local acoustic conditions. You witness the birth of a new underwater mountain as volcanic activity creates acoustic conditions that seem to warp the very fabric of sound transmission in the surrounding water. The intense heat and chemical activity around the volcanic vent create density gradients that bend sound waves in unpredictable directions, causing acoustic mirages where sounds appear to originate from locations far from their actual source. The connection between seismic activity and the ocean's acoustic landscape extends beyond individual earthquakes to encompass the slow, continuous process of tectonic movement. The gradual shifting of continental plates generates ultra-low frequency sounds that propagate through the ocean for years or even decades, creating a form of geological communication that operates on timescales that dwarf human experience. Some researchers believe that the ocean's sedimentary archives may contain acoustic records of these slow tectonic conversations stretching back millions of years. You drift away from the seismic whispers into a region where the water around you begins to feel different, subtly warmer in some layers and distinctly cooler in others. And as you move through these thermal boundaries, you discover that temperature changes in the ocean create some of the most profound effects on sound transmission, turning the sea into a vast acoustic lens that can focus, bend, and channel sound waves in ways that seem to defy the normal rules of physics. The layer of water you're passing through now represents a thermocline, a boundary where temperature drops rapidly with depth, and this invisible barrier acts like an acoustic mirror, reflecting certain frequencies back toward the surface while allowing others to pass through into the colder depths below. It's as if the ocean has developed its own system of acoustic traffic control, directing different types of sounds along predetermined paths based solely on the temperature structure of the water column. You follow a whale song as it encounters one of these thermal layers and watch in fascination as the sound wave bends downward, following the curvature of the thermocline like light bending through a prism. This acoustic refraction allows the whale's call to travel much farther than it would in water of uniform temperature. And you begin to understand why marine mammals have evolved to take advantage of these natural sound channels, using temperature gradients as highways for long-distance communication. The seasonal patterns of ocean temperature create a dynamic acoustic landscape that changes throughout the year. During winter months, when surface waters cool, the thermoclines shift deeper, altering the paths that sound waves follow and potentially disrupting communication patterns that marine animals have relied upon for months. Remember the infrasonic highways from before. These natural communication networks must constantly adapt to the changing thermal structure of the ocean, like a telephone system whose wiring is rearranged by invisible forces. Researchers still argue that climate change is fundamentally altering the ocean's acoustic properties by changing temperature patterns that have remained stable for thousands of years. As surface waters warm and deep waters retain their cold temperatures, the thermoclines are becoming more pronounced, creating stronger acoustic lenses that may be channeling sound in ways that interfere with marine animal communication. It's possible that whales and dolphins are having to learn new acoustic strategies to cope with these changing conditions. You encounter a remarkable phenomenon called acoustic focusing, where converging temperature gradients create underwater zones where sound waves concentrate with unusual intensity. In these focal zones, whispered sounds can travel for hundreds of miles with perfect clarity, while louder sounds at different frequencies are completely blocked. It's as if the ocean has developed acoustic hotspots where certain types of communication become dramatically more efficient. The relationship between temperature and sound speed in seawater creates conditions that would be impossible in any other medium. Warm water transmits sound faster than cold water, but the difference is so subtle that it only becomes apparent over long distances. A sound wave traveling through water that varies in temperature by just a few degrees can arrive at its destination several seconds earlier or later than expected, and marine animals seem to compensate for these timing differences in ways that suggest incredibly sophisticated acoustic processing abilities. You witness temperature-driven acoustic phenomena that seem almost magical in their complexity. Sound waves that spiral through the water column as they follow helical temperature patterns. Acoustic shadows that move and shift as thermal layers rise and fall with tidal cycles. And mysterious zones where sounds from the surface world mix with calls from the deep in ways that create haunting acoustic collages. The deep sound channel, that highway for long-distance communication you experienced earlier, exists only because of a specific temperature profile that creates a natural acoustic waveguide at depths of around 1,000 meters. Here, where the water is cold enough to slow sound transmission, but not so deep that pressure effects dominate. Whale calls and other sounds can travel for thousands of miles with minimal loss, but this channel's depth and effectiveness vary with seasonal temperature changes in ways that marine animals must somehow account for in their communication strategies. You discover that some marine species appear to use temperature-induced acoustic effects as navigation aids, listening to how their own vocalizations are modified by thermal layers to determine their depth and location relative to ocean currents. It's a form of thermal echolocation that operates on principles completely different from the biosonar systems you observed with the dolphins, but potentially just as sophisticated in its own way. The most intriguing aspect of temperature-sound interactions is how they create acoustic weather systems in the ocean, regions where changing thermal conditions generate shifting patterns of sound transmission that move through the water like underwater storms. These acoustic weather fronts can enhance or diminish a communication over vast areas, creating conditions where marine animals might experience periods of acoustic isolation followed by windows of enhanced long-distance connectivity. Remember the phantom sounds you encountered earlier. Some of these mysterious acoustic phenomena might actually represent normal biological sounds that have been distorted beyond recognition by unusual temperature conditions. You drift toward the culmination of your acoustic journey through the ocean's hidden sound world, entering a region that seems to exist outside the normal rules of underwater acoustics, here in the deepest trenches where the water pressure exceeds anything found elsewhere on Earth. You discover the ocean's most profound mystery, zones where sound simply ceases to exist, not absorbed or scattered like in the acoustic shadows you experienced near the seamount, but actually annihilated by conditions so extreme that they create pockets of absolute acoustic vacuum in the midst of the world's most sound-conductive medium. These silent zones represent the ocean's final frontier, places where the normal physics of sound transmission break down completely. The extreme pressure at depths exceeding 6 miles creates water density conditions that approach the theoretical limits of acoustic propagation, and within these zones, the ocean falls silent in ways that seem to violate everything you've learned about underwater sound transmission. Even the ever-present background noise of thermal motion and molecular vibration disappears, leaving behind a silence so complete that it seems to have physical weight. The boundaries of these silent zones shift and fluctuate like underwater weather systems, expanding and contracting based on deep current patterns, temperature variations, and pressure changes that operate on timescales measured in decades rather than days. And as you drift along one of these shifting boundaries, you can actually feel the transition from normal acoustic conditions into the realm of absolute silence, like passing through an invisible membrane that separates the acoustic world from acoustic nothingness. Within the deepest silent zone, you encounter something that challenges your understanding of everything you've experienced in the ocean's acoustic realm. Here, where no sound should be able to exist, you detect the faintest suggestion of organized vibration, patterns so subtle that they exist at the very threshold of perception, yet they exhibit the complex organizational characteristics of intelligent communication. Remember the phantom sounds from before, with their mysterious origins and unexplained patterns. These ultra-subtle signals in the silent zones may represent the same phenomena stripped down to their absolute essence. Researchers still argue that these silent zones may serve as the ocean's equivalent of sensory deprivation chambers, places where marine animals can retreat from the constant acoustic stimulation of the normal underwater environment. Some deep-diving species appear to seek out these regions during certain phases of their life cycles, possibly using the acoustic isolation to enhance their sensitivity to other environmental cues like magnetic fields, chemical gradients, or pressure variations. The paradox of sound within soundlessness becomes even more intriguing when you realize that these silent zones are not actually empty of acoustic activity. Instead, they represent regions where sound operates according to entirely different principles, acoustic phenomena that exist at energy levels so low that they can only be detected by instruments of extraordinary sensitivity. And these ultra-quiet sounds exhibit patterns of complexity that rival anything found in the normal acoustic environment. You discover that the silent zones serve as acoustic reservoirs where sound energy accumulates over long periods, like underground lakes that collect water from distant sources. These regions gradually absorb acoustic energy from the surrounding ocean and store it in ways that create delayed acoustic releases. Sounds that were absorbed months or years ago occasionally emerge from the silent zones as ghostly echoes that confound researchers trying to trace their origins. The temperature-sound interactions you experienced earlier take on new significance in the silent zones, where even tiny thermal variations can create dramatic changes in acoustic conditions. A temperature change of just a fraction of a degree can cause portions of a silent zone to suddenly become acoustically active, releasing stored sound energy in bursts that propagate through the ocean, carrying information about conditions that existed long before the sounds were finally released. The geological processes that create these silent zones operate on timescales that dwarf human understanding. The formation of deep ocean trenches, the accumulation of specialized sediment layers, and the development of unique pressure and temperature profiles all contribute to acoustic conditions that may have remained stable for millions of years. Yet the zones themselves are constantly evolving, expanding, and contracting as the Earth's geological processes slowly reshape the ocean floor. As your consciousness begins to drift toward the surface world, leaving behind the acoustic mysteries of the deep ocean, you realize that the silent zones represent more than just the absence of sound. They constitute the ocean's memory banks, regions where acoustic information is stored, processed, and occasionally released in ways that suggest the planet itself may possess forms of awareness that operate on scales too vast for human comprehension. Remember the whale songs, the infrasonic highways, the phantom sounds, and the seismic whispers. All of these acoustic phenomena ultimately flow toward and emerge from these zones of profound silence, as if the ocean's entire acoustic network exists to serve some deeper purpose that can only be fulfilled in the absolute quiet of the abyss. And now, as your consciousness slowly rises from those impossible depths where silence itself becomes a form of communication, you can feel the weight of 3 miles of water gradually lifting from your awareness. The pressure that would have crushed your physical form, dissolving like a dream as you drift upward through the ocean's layered acoustic landscape one final time. The phantom sounds that puzzled you in the darkness begin to fade into memory, their mysterious origins and unknown purposes becoming part of the vast collection of oceanic secrets that you'll carry with you as you return to the surface world, and the infrasonic highways that connected distant parts of the planet with their subsonic messages grow quiet now, their constant traffic of ultra-low frequency information settling into the background hum of your sleeping mind. The whale songs that guided you through this underwater journey become softer and more distant, their complex melodies transforming into the rhythm of your own breathing as your body relaxes deeper into sleep. And the seismic whispers that spoke of earthquakes and volcanic activity on the ocean floor merge with the gentle sounds of your room, the soft hum of electronics, the distant murmur of traffic, all of it becoming part of a surface world lullaby that will carry you peacefully through the night. The temperature currents that bend sound waves through the water column now become the warmth of your blankets, wrapping around you with the same gentle precision that thermal layers guided acoustic signals across entire ocean basins, and the silent zones where sound itself ceased to exist transform into the approaching realm of dreamless sleep, that profound quiet where your mind can rest in absolute peace, free from the constant acoustic stimulation of waking life. As the last echoes of the ocean's hidden symphony fade from your awareness, you find yourself floating not in the crushing depths of the abyss, but in the soft comfort of your own bed, surrounded by the familiar acoustic landscape of home, where the only sounds that matter now are the slow, steady rhythm of your breathing and the gentle whisper of sleep approaching like a tide that will carry you safely through the night toward tomorrow's discoveries. End of script. Sweet dreams.